here is our expert. We have David Seeger. He is the president of Great Lakes Credit Union. I wanted to make sure I got that right since I'm filling in for Abby and John this morning.
Yes, you did. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much, David, for joining us. Now, today we're talking about taxes. So explain Taxmageddon first off while we dive into this conversation.
Taxmageddon is a term that's been used by the media about what's going to happen on January 1st. What's going to happen is basically this. We're going to see an increase in taxes because the Bush tax cuts will be ending at that point in time, and also some major cuts in spending on behalf of the government. In terms of maybe about $100 billion worth of cuts, which is going to slow down the economy immensely.
So what does this mean for the everyday person, working person?
For the everyday person, they'll see some increases in taxes, depending upon what bracket they're in. They'll see an increase in taxes there. They're also going to see an end to the marriage penalty tax that was excluded before. That's going to come back. You're going to see the other increases in terms of the FICA taxes, the payroll taxes. They'll go back up to 6.2% from the 4.2% they're at right now. So we're going to see some increases there and some economic slowdown, which is the main issue.
And that's obviously not good news.
No, as a matter of fact, it's going to slow the economy down by 4%. And right now, the GDP is at 1.5%, which is a measure of how things are going in the economy in terms of total goods and services. It's going to slow that down to a negative number, which could put us into a double-dip recession, which is a major concern. The Federal Reserve Chairman calls us the financial cliff. We need to do something about it.
What can be done about it?
Well, the President and Congress needs to get together and come up with a better plan to achieve the same things, but on a slower basis. This is too much of a shock to the system of the economy, and that's why we're going to be in a recession if they're doing something about it, because it's hitting the economy too hard, and one, by raising taxes and also cutting federal expenditures. It'll slow the economy down too much, and this is where the problems begin.
So this sounds, you know, for a lot of people who aren't really following this or being familiar with this Taxmageddon, it just sounds like panic mode. Okay, so what should folks be doing now to help prepare for this?
Well, if anything, they should be contacting their congressmen or writing the White House, doing something of that effect in order to try to tell them we need to make this change so that we can accomplish the same type of thing but over a longer period of time, so it won't shock the economy as much as it's going to shock the economy. It definitely will have an impact to the point where it might put us, very likely will put us into another recession.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, ouch. Okay. Tell us a little bit more about how this Taxmageddon came about.
Well, it came about as an agreement last year when they tried to raise the tax ceiling. And they said, okay, if we raise the tax ceiling to 16.4 trillion, the debt ceiling, right, the 16.4 trillion, we want something in exchange for that. So what we're raising that, we also want to see some cuts or tax increases in order to balance that off. Okay, so we raised it about 1.1 trillion. So in doing so, that's where the tax increases came in, as well as the cuts in spending.
Now tell us your take in terms of infrastructure, bridges, things like that. What should be done?
Well, I think what could be done is just in terms of a more of a moderate approach to accomplish the same type of thing. In the short term, maybe do some economic stimulus. Let's invest in our infrastructure in terms of building roads, fixing them, bridges and things of that nature. It is estimated that 300 bridges a day fail in the United States. That's a lot. And in order for us to be competitive in the global economy, what we need to do is at least have an infrastructure that will support our manufacturing base, our infrastructure, so we can do different things to be competitive with the rest of the world as efficient as they are. So that's one thing that needs to be done. Then we can look at maybe something like the Simpson-Bowles recommendation in terms of maybe we can raise some taxes by broadening the tax base, and also cuts in expenditures in terms of looking at entitlements and other things that has a major impact on our economy.
Okay, last question. We will talk more about this in the 6 o'clock hour as well, but to wrap up this 5 o'clock segment, who will be affected most by this? Which tax bracket?
People on the higher end in terms of the tax increases. So take it from 35%, which is the maximum right now, to 39.6%.
Okay, David Seeger, we will continue this conversation in the 6 o'clock hour. Taxmageddon, January 1st, 2013. It is time to think about it now and get prepared. We'll talk more about it in the 6 o'clock hour. Thank you so much for joining us. And then the expert, good morning. Thank you so much once again for joining us. And the big phrase, Taxmageddon.
Taxmageddon.
Sounds scary.
Yes, it is.
What are we talking about?
And it is scary because on January 1st, this is going to be a factor in our daily lives as well as our economic lives. First of all, the government is going to do a couple things. One, raise taxes. The Bush tax cuts will end on December 31st. And then secondly, they'll do some major cuts in spending starting January 1st as well, to the tune of about $110 billion. Half come out of the defense budget and half come out of discretionary spending. The major issue is this, and the reason they call it Taxmageddon and the Federal Reserve Chairman called it the financial cliff, is the fact of the matter that we need to do both, but it's happening too fast.
Right, and you're saying, too, that this is going to put us into possibly another recession.
Very likely, in as much as it's estimated that these two things that are happening in terms of raising taxes and also cutting spending from the government's aspect of the economy is going to slow the economy down by 4 points. Right now, our GDP is at 1.5, and this will drop it by 4, so put us in negative territory, which is by definition a recession. This could be the double-dip recession everybody's been talking about.
So a recipe for disaster potentially. So what were the ingredients to go into this?
Well, what this whole thing was in terms of Taxmageddon, it was an agreement between the President and Congress last year in terms of when they raised the debt ceiling to $16.4 trillion, they said, okay, we're going to have to find ways to cut the amount of what we raise the debt ceiling to by that amount in terms of spending increases and also tax increases. So that being the case, they came up with this idea that we are going to be cutting taxes by about $110 billion, and cutting spending by $110 billion, and also raise taxes by letting the Bush tax cuts expire.
Gotcha. So I think a lot of people are wondering, am I going to be affected? How will this affect me? How will this affect my family? Let's talk about the particular tax bracket where people will see most of the changes.
It's going to affect a lot of people. As a matter of fact, in terms of the Bush tax cuts, it's going to raise the top ceiling from 35% to 39.6%. We're also going to see the end of the marriage penalty. Right now, the marriage for joint fathers, if you're married, the penalty that you had before is going to come back. If you have children, the $1,000 tax credit will go back to $500 instead of $1,000. And for the FICA, which is the Social Security portion that you pay out of your paycheck every time you get paid, that's going to go from 4.2 to 6.2. So you see increases all over the place.
All right. Well, is there any advice you want to give to folks to maybe help prepare themselves? So, I mean, to lessen the blow? I mean, what are some steps that people can start taking now?
Not so much in terms of what they can do in terms of lessening the blow, because it's coming. The storm's coming. It's going to hit unless Congress and the President comes to some type of more rational approach to reducing the total deficit that we have, and not this huge of an approach what they're trying to do now. Let's modify it and do it more gently.
All right. David Seeger, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We don't have a lot of time for these segments, but we'll see you back here for next week's segment on Money Monday. Again, where can folks go for more information?
They could go to our website, and they can get more information about what we're talking about on there.
All right, David, thank you so much for joining us. We have to take a break. It is 31 minutes past the hour. When we come back,